Most people missed the real story. They saw smoke, headlines about missile strikes, moved on. I didn't. When you've spent years tracking how empires actually break, you recognize a pattern. February 28th, 2025, two locations most Americans can't find on a map, not random retaliation. Surgical dismemberment of the nervous system keeping American naval dominance alive in the Middle East. I'm Kane Shimatsuka, and I need you to understand something no Pentagon briefing will ever admit. The facility commanding 2.5 million square miles of ocean, the port feeding every American ground operation in Kuwait, the ship extending U.S. Navy range across the Indian Ocean, all came under coordinated Iranian attack within the same operational window, not scattered strikes, a kill chain designed to collapse American power one node at a time. There's a 20-story luxury apartment in Manama, Bahrain, where residents watch U.S. Navy personnel walk to work every morning. The Crown Plaza Hotel sits close enough that breakfast guests see the 5th Fleet headquarters from their tables, not some hardened bunker in the desert. The command center for America's entire naval presence across the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, Gulf of Oman, embedded in a residential neighborhood like a Starbucks franchise. And on the last day of February, Iranian missiles turned parts of it into smoke visible from those same balconies. The 5th Fleet doesn't just coordinate a few destroyers, it manages operations across 21 countries, oversees 3 of the most critical maritime choke points on Earth, Strait of Hormuz, Suez Canal, Bab al-Mandeb, processes intelligence keeping 20% of the world's oil supply flowing without interruption, 20%, 1/5 of every barrel keeping Tokyo's lights on, Berlin's trucks moving, Mumbai's factories running. All of it depends on a command structure that just took a hit in a neighborhood where civilians filmed the impact on their phones. And let me be clear about what that geographic vulnerability actually means in operational terms. Every NATO command center, every major military headquarters I've studied, exists inside layers of defensive architecture. Hardened bunkers, redundant communication nodes, physical separation from civilian infrastructure specifically to survive decapitation strikes. The 5th Fleet headquarters sits in Juffair because for 30 years, the operating assumption was that Iran wouldn't dare, that American deterrence was strong enough that the location didn't matter. That assumption died on February 28th. Stars and Stripes, the Defense Department's own publication, confirmed damage to a service center near the command hub. Satellite imagery showed smoke. Bahrain's Ministry of Interior admitted the international airport, the same airport designated as evacuation point for American families, was struck and sustained material damage. The exit route got hit. Families ordered to leave couldn't leave because the door just got kicked in. 60 miles northwest, across the Gulf in Kuwait, Port Shuwaikh took strikes during the same window. You've never heard of Port Shuwaikh. Neither had most defense analysts until Iranian munitions started landing on it. A logistics facility handling fuel transfers, military cargo, supply throughput, keeping Camp Arifjan and Ali al-Salam airbase operational. No fuel means no sorties. No spare parts means no maintenance cycles. No logistics means no sustained American presence. Iran didn't hit this port to make headlines. Iran hit it to cut the bloodstream, brain in Bahrain, bloodstream in Kuwait, and this is where the pattern becomes undeniable if you know what you're looking for. I've analyzed enough conflicts to recognize when targeting shifts from symbolic to systemic. Iraq, 2003, the coalition went after leadership, communication towers, presidential palaces, targets designed to shock and demoralize. Afghanistan, the focus was on training camps, weapons depots, known insurgent positions. This is different. Iran isn't targeting what looks important. Iran is targeting what actually matters. The fuel depot that keeps F-35s flying, the port that moves spare parts, the headquarters that coordinates fleet movements across 3 seas. These are not spectacular targets. These are structural targets. The kind you hit when you've studied your opponent's logistics infrastructure and identified the 5 or 6 nodes where if you apply enough pressure, the whole system starts developing cracks. Reports started filtering in about an MSTC-class support ship, essentially a floating gas station for U.S. Navy destroyers, getting struck by Khorramshahr missiles in the Indian Ocean. Not a warship, a refueling vessel. The ship letting American combat vessels stay forward deployed instead of sailing back to port every few days. Hit the gas station, compress the range, force the fleet back toward bases that are themselves under attack. Systems-level warfare, and most people watching cable news think it's just missiles going boom. Here's where the nightmare math starts. A Shahed 136 drone, the kind Iran manufactures in bulk like stamping out car parts, costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 depending on configuration. Patriot PAC-3 interceptor, the missile you fire to shoot that drone down, runs about $4 million per shot, $4 million to stop 50,000, an 80-to-1 cost ratio favoring the attacker, and the asymmetry gets worse. Iran can produce these systems using commercial off-the-shelf components, basic electronics, hobbyist-grade GPS modules, readily available materials that bypass every sanctions regime the West has ever designed. Meanwhile, every Patriot missile requires precision-engineered components from defense contractors with lead times measured in months, quality control processes that span continents, and supply chains vulnerable to disruption at dozens of choke points. You're comparing a weapons system that can be assembled in a warehouse outside Tehran using parts ordered online to a weapons system that requires the entire industrial military complex of the United States to function. That's not a technology gap. That's a structural mismatch between 21st century distributed manufacturing and 20th century defense procurement. You can't build Patriot interceptors fast. Lockheed Martin's production rate, even under optimized conditions, outputs something like 6 to 7 missiles per month, according to multiple defense industry assessments I've reviewed. 6 missiles per month. Iran's drone factories are running continuous production, measured in thousands of units. The Heritage Foundation, not some anti-war think tank but a conservative pro-defense institution, published modeling suggesting U.S. interceptor stockpiles would face systemic strain within 30 to 60 days of sustained high-intensity combat. 30 days. We're already weeks into this conflict, and Gulf Cooperation Council states have been burning through interceptors like fireworks on New Year's Eve. Every single engagement is a forced purchase order. Iran sends a mixed salvo, drones and ballistic missiles together, and the radar operator watching those blips cannot tell which one costs $50,000 and which one carries a warhead that could kill hundreds. So the standing order, the only rational order, engage everything. $4 million per trigger pull. Iran just keeps sending more. I've seen the reporting from We Are the Mighty, a publication read almost exclusively by active duty and veteran U.S. service members, and the line that circulated after these strikes landed hard. America spent decades and tens of billions building an air defense umbrella over the Gulf. Iran just demonstrated it could contest that umbrella at a fraction of the cost, using weapons that can be mass-produced faster than the interceptors designed to stop them. That's not spin. That's arithmetic. Arithmetic doesn't care about patriotism or mission statements or how many carrier strike groups you have on paper. What I'm watching unfold is not a war where one side wins decisively and the other collapses. What I'm watching is a war of erosion where the side with deeper magazines and cheaper weapons grinds down the side with better technology and finite stockpiles. The United States, for all its overwhelming firepower, operates on a logistics model that assumes short, decisive conflicts, not prolonged attritional warfare where the enemy can afford to lose 10 drones for every interceptor you fire because they'll just build 20 more next week. And here's the part that should terrify every strategist in the Pentagon. China is watching this exact playbook unfold in real time. Every interceptor America burns in the Gulf is one less sitting in a magazine that could defend Taiwan. Every logistics node Iran proves vulnerable is a blueprint Beijing is updating in its own war plans. The depletion happening right now in Bahrain and Kuwait isn't just a Gulf problem, it's a global deterrence crisis. Because if Iran, with a $15 billion defense budget, can systematically contest American power projection using mass-produced drones and precision missiles, what does that tell Beijing about its chances in the South China Sea with a defense budget 40 times larger? The answer is being written in smoke plumes over Juffair right now. The 5th Fleet headquarters in Juffair, the port in Kuwait, the support ship in the Indian Ocean, these were not random targets. These were the nodes making American military power in the region function as a system. Command and control, logistics, range extension. Iran didn't go after the most visible targets, the carrier groups, the fighter squadrons. Iran went after the connective tissue. Every shipping company, every energy trader, every allied government in the region is now recalculating their assumptions about whether American presence in the Gulf can be sustained under this kind of systematic pressure. I'm not saying the U.S. Navy is defeated. I'm saying the assumptions that underpinned American dominance, untouchable command facilities, secure logistics chains, interceptor stockpiles deep enough to outlast any adversary, those assumptions just got tested in real time. The smoke rising from Juffair, visible from apartment balconies where people were eating breakfast, is the test result. And here's what comes next, because I've seen this pattern before in different theaters, different conflicts, same trajectory. The Pentagon will rush emergency munition shipments to the Gulf. Interceptor stocks will be drawn down from Europe, from the Pacific, creating gaps in other theaters. Production lines will be accelerated, which means costs will spike and quality control will face pressure. Allied nations will start hedging, quietly exploring accommodation with Iran because they're doing the same math I'm doing and realizing American protection has a price ceiling that's being approached faster than anyone planned. Insurance premiums for Gulf shipping will continue climbing until certain routes become economically non-viable, regardless of military assurances. You can ignore it. You can call it Iranian propaganda. You can wait for the Pentagon's sanitized briefing. Or you can look at the math, look at the production timelines, look at the target selection, and recognize what's actually happening. I've spent my entire career studying how power shifts, how empires adjust, when their assumptions get challenged by reality. And what I'm seeing in the Gulf right now is not an adjustment. It's a recalibration, the kind that happens when one side realizes the rulebook they've been operating under no longer applies, and the other side realizes they've been holding leverage they didn't know they had. This is Kane Shimatsuka. The world is changing faster than the people in charge want to admit. And that change is moving in a direction most of you aren't ready for.